Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am very pleased that you're holding this hearing and agree with you that we need to proceed through this hearing and this nomination because it is such an important position and there are so many areas in which the Department of Commerce must function and function well. The expansive jurisdiction covering such matters as NOAA, international trade, and our domestic telecommunications infrastructure are of immediate interest, and we did give $17 billion in budgetary authority for fiscal year 2009 to the Department of Commerce to carry out these missions. There are a number of challenges, and I look forward to hearing from you about how you will manage them. First is the census. There has been a lot of discussion, as you are aware, about the oversight of the 2010 census, and I have concerns about reports that the administration might insert itself into the management of the census. I believe the process must remain transparent and non-politicized, and when I met with you earlier this month, we talked about that, and I was pleased to hear your position that the census will stay in the Department of Commerce and it will be handled on a professional basis, and I will ask you about that for the record to assure that we are on the same wavelength, which I believe we are from my conversation with you. DTV is a huge undertaking, and this committee, with the leadership of the chairman, actually extended the deadline for the transition from February to June. However, we cannot extend that deadline again. The NTIA has been given additional funding, and the number of consumers on the wait list to receive coupons has diminished, but there are still many out there, and I will certainly want to see how you plan to run the NTIA to assure that DTV is ready to transition in June, because it would be wrong to extend that deadline again. Science and technology. Investments in science and technology will be extremely important in helping our nation's economic recovery. We need to invest in basic scientific research, math, and science education. One area that I hope to talk to you about is the issue of research efforts in the area of weather modification and storm mitigation. I'm particularly interested in your views because NOAA and the National Weather Service will be very much a part of that in your department. You also have moved or you will, the Commerce Department, to deliver more than $4 billion in broadband grants across the country. Broadband, as we all know, is the key building block for new business and jobs, but we must ensure that the broadband policies focus on both urban and rural America and offer solutions for both. The Department must also continue to work with the Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers to ensure that the Internet remains a secure space in which commerce can flourish nationally and internationally. Other issues. In my home state of Texas, we rely very heavily on weather, making sure that we know what the predictions are, what the track of a hurricane is. We are also the home to significant oil, gas, and other energy infrastructure, maritime commerce, all vital to our nation and all very much affected by the Department of Commerce. As an example, when Hurricane Ike hit Texas and Louisiana coast last September, NOAA's advanced warnings clearly minimized the loss of life, and its many response teams helped to reopen our ports and coastal infrastructure to commerce. It was incredible to see what NOAA did and the Weather Service did, tracking that hurricane from 5 days out and hitting it almost on the dot, where it would land. They predicted well the hurricane. What we didn't have predicted was the surge, which really was the damage causer, both there and in Katrina, frankly. So that's an issue that we're going to have to address. So there are so many things that affect our country that are within your department. I think you have acquitted yourself very well during this time since your nomination, and you have a very strong record as governor, and I look forward to working with the chairman to expedite your nomination, barring any unforeseen questions or answers or anything that we haven't learned yet. Everything I've seen is very good. Thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you in all these areas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor Locke, I want to have a clear statement on the record regarding the census, and you have stated that it will be in the Department of Commerce and that you will share information with both Congress and the White House. Let me ask you, when we talked, you said that you believe that it must be absolutely accurate and that you believe in counting actual individuals at the correct locations and did not think that we should use statistical sampling. Is that your position, and would you elaborate, if you would like to, on your own position?
Thank you, Senator. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that statistical sampling is not permissible for apportionment purposes. That is the law. We will enforce the law. And that is the position, plain and simple. Statistical sampling is used with respect to determining accuracy, to determine whether or not we need to do a better outreach with specific communities or parts of the country. And in fact, we also have a long form and a short form that gets into some of the demographic detailing and profiling of the American population, American families. That is a method of sampling just to find out income levels and et cetera, et cetera. But again, for the purposes of the census, as we all understand it, the apportionment, statistical sampling will not be used by the Department of Census.
Thank you. I think that is clear, and I think it is the expectation of all of us that the actual count is what we would be interested in assuring, and I think we're together on that. And I thank you for the clear position that you took both with me privately and here. Secondly, on the issue of the DTV, I think that all of us have talked about it, and you have said that you will make it happen. However, I want to say that I'm concerned that we haven't had a nominee put forward yet to lead the NTIA, your Assistant Secretary position, and I wanted to ask you if you are going to address that, if you can tell us today that you have a nominee in mind. Where do we stand on having the actual person in charge of the DTV transition to come before us?
I can tell you that we do have a nominee in mind. That person is being reviewed by the White House. But we also I want to say that we also have a Deputy Assistant Secretary at NTIA who's helping lead this. And we also have already put in place, or the department has put in place, mechanisms for oversight with respect to a lot of these projects, not just digital television conversion, but a lot of the federal stimulus dollars for broadband. And they have an interagency team overseeing this, working with the Inspector General's office that cuts across the department and is on top of these very large funding and projects where the Congress and the American people and the administration have expectations of getting these dollars out quickly, but with results. And so we can talk more about that, but with respect to digital television, we do have a Deputy Assistant Secretary at NTIA that I have great confidence in, who's very familiar with these projects, who brings an incredible level of energy and management oversight. And so while we don't have an Assistant Secretary for NTIA that has been officially announced or nominated yet, the department is moving forward. We also have incredible professionals in the department. Secretaries come and go, and a lot of these political appointees come and go, but there's a great deal of pride and expertise within the agency, and we are harnessing them, or at least the Deputy Assistant Secretary for NTIA is harnessing them and already working with stakeholders to get this job done.
Governor Locke, I have introduced twice in two different Congresses bills to increase the research and the data that we have on the violence of the weather, as in more significant hurricanes, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the surge issue that really has come, I think, in very recent times to cause the most destruction, which would be Katrina and Ike. In addition to that, I think we used to gather the information regarding the change in weather patterns where there had been cloud seeding and other weather modification efforts, but that was actually stopped years ago back in the 80s. My question to you is, where do you think we can most effectively begin to gather this data and begin research? My hope and my original thought is that it would be in NOAA. And if you have any thoughts about the best place to do it, and would you work with me to develop this legislation going forward so that we can achieve this? We did not have the support in the past from the administration for the Department of Commerce, and I think that is where it would logically stand. So my question to you is, what do you think, and would you work with me to achieve the right result?
Well, thank you, Senator. We chatted about this when I first met with you several weeks ago. I do believe that NOAA is the appropriate place for this research and data collection. It's a natural extension of the work that they do now with respect to weather, as well as the oceans. Several people have mentioned the impact of the surge of seawater after hurricanes, and given the fact that NOAA does that research, it's a natural extension of their capability, their expertise, and we must, in fact, gather more data and engage in more research with respect to all of our weather patterns to understand whether or not modification of weather in one region affects what the weather would have been in another part of the United States, and making sure that whatever modification efforts there are at weather do not hamper and have dire consequences for the weather of another part of the region, because communities depend on that, whether it's water for irrigation, water for fish, or recreation, and for drinking water for people. And so I very much support that type of research and data collection, would look forward to working with you on the legislation that you might develop.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Governor, we talked about the census, and we talked about the Supreme Court ruling that you agree and will comply with the law. Just one other point on that, and that is the Supreme Court did not specifically mention the intrastate redistricting. What you have said is, on the record, that you want people to be counted one by one in the right place as well, and that is what would affect the intrastate redistricting. Is it your view that the intrastate redistricting, meaning every person is counted in their appropriate place, is also a function of the census that should be adhered to, the person in their proper place counted, so that intrastate redistricting is also not going to have statistical sampling?
It's my understanding that there are no plans within the Department of Commerce or the Census Bureau to use any type of statistical sampling with respect to population count.
Thank you. I think that's clear and would apply to intrastate as well. Let me ask you one last question. I think we've covered pretty well everything here through all the questions, and that is the The Department of Commerce and the Department of Interior issued joint regulations last December on the use of the Endangered Species Act for climate change policy. And in the omnibus bill that passed last week, it contains a provision that the Secretaries of Commerce and Interior could concurrently withdraw within 60 days those joint ESA regulations without having to go through any notice or public comment and without being subject to any judicial review. I am concerned about that, and that a joint set of regulations that went through the proper process and all of the comment periods and were in a final regulation, that you would then be able to withdraw it without any of those notices of proposed rulemaking about the withdrawal and the comment period before any kind of final withdrawal of that could be made. What is your position on that? And is that something you're looking at?
Senator, I'm not really well versed on the history of that particular issue. All I can say is that it's important with respect to any listings of endangered species that we follow the law, that we provide appropriate and full notice of any actions before they are taken, so that there's ample time for public comment and feedback from other agencies and other stakeholders.
Well, I think it was an expansion of the use of the Endangered Species Act to affect global climate change policy rather than the normal use of the Endangered Species Act, which is to protect endangered species. So my question would be, would you agree that if you're going to withdraw a final regulation, that you would go through the processes of a notice of proposed rulemaking published in the Federal Register with comment periods before there would be any kind of change in that in the regulation that was promulgated last December?
Again, Senator, that's a little bit out of my league and out of my realm of expertise, and I'm not familiar with the various legal requirements on how regulations are proposed under the federal system and how regulations might even be withdrawn. So it is an area of which I have almost no knowledge.
Well, the law, the omnibus bill, did allow the withdrawal without going through the procedures. And so you could legally do something like that. And I realize you're not prepared to answer that, but I would like an answer on the record regarding your views on implementing that, in my opinion, erroneous direction that could be used. I don't think we should waive the normal requirements for rulemakings, because I think that they are very thorough, and I would hope that you wouldn't use the newly given authority that Congress did pass in the Omnibus Appropriations Bill. And I would ask you to answer on the record if you would go through the normal process if, in fact, you were going to withdraw the regulation that was promulgated.
Okay. Be happy to do that, Senator.
Thank you.